Hey everyone, this is Tony Holbein. You are listening to The Revenue Formula with Mikkel and Tony. In today's episode, we're talking about growth envy and break down how teams like Cursor have gone from 0 to 100 million in literally no time at all with just 20 people. Enjoy. Today's episode is brought to you by Everstage, the top-rated platform to automate sales commissions. You can create a single hub for your reps to track all their deals, earnings, and performance history, thanks to Everstage's seamless integration with Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, Slack, and MS Teams. Reps can also know exactly how much they could earn with Crystal, Everstage's one-of-a-kind commission forecasting module. Visit everstage.com to learn more and help your sales teams ace 2025.
Oh, now it feels so quiet and sad. It's like I heard apparently someone arranged a screaming party in Berlin yesterday where folks could come and basically scream out their emotions.
It's called the election.
No, exactly. It was part of the election, but people could come and scream out their emotions. But apparently everyone there were just sitting quietly on their chair watching the news in a half-empty room. I was like, wow, that captures the mood of this election. Oh, man.
No, I think you just saw Germany. It's like... Germany's at peak emotion, basically,
and then
sitting there.
Apparently there was this was a bit hilarious. There was a bus in Berlin. Did you hear about this? There was a bus. They had a screen,
Tell me more about the bus.
That basically read F off AFD. And then it made these air raid sirens. And it became so loud that the police could actually not communicate with each other. So they just had to go in there and smash the speakers. Like, oh man, this is so German. We're gonna lose the entire German audience just because we're dabbling a bit into politics now.
No. I think they're all pro what we're discussing here right now. So it's all good.
Well, the thing is also we are not really expressing what is good and bad or anything in this area. We're just stating matter of fact right now. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's leave it at that. Let's leave the realm of politics aside and enter a much more interesting realm. Our whole go-to-market, software scale-up environment. What's on our mind at the moment?
So we, as many others of, probably the audience, have heard about some crazy growth stories. So there's kind of this new thing going around of like, hey, Cursor went to 100 million with 10 employees?
20.
Lovable did, to 20 million with like 5 people and... Ball to like 500 million with what it's like. I mean, the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
And while all of us are looking at this, like, geez,
500 people organization or something.
I hope that was me. Why is this me? Why is it these other people? We wanted to kind of peel the onion a little bit and discuss why is it that those teams took off like they did, and not do like a deep dive into product and things that we don't know, but basically kind of take a objective lens to it and kind of try and understand why they were able to take off like that. But also buffer this a little bit with, okay, they did take off, but that because I think there's like a second chapter to all of these growth stories that obviously don't get the prominence on LinkedIn when we get there, right? And we've seen the first couple of folks already in this space, like we just mentioned, like a Copy AI, like a Writer.com, a couple of those folks, extremely noisy in the beginning, not so noisy anymore recently. So we can just guess what's going on.
I think it's also important to cover this subject because I at least remember being in those conversations when you look with this, we have this envious look at this other startup that's just rapidly growing and you go like, oh, they're doing freemium? We should do freemium. That's how you get to 100 million with, 50, 20 people. So we can fire everyone and just do freemium. Yes. And you kind of ignore that there's a bunch of other things that are actually happening because it's not the first time a company with few people have scaled incredibly fast to a high AR number. Like we discussed, we're not going to get into those cases, but Instagram, we've talked about previously, WhatsApp, another one, right? And we just want to break down what are some of the ingredients that basically led them to get here. And I think it just is relevant to know also because then you can start looking at what ingredients do you have to play with? And is there some kind of path dependency or physical limit for how much you can grow. So we wanted to at least, let's say, demystify, peel the onion, break down, analyze, run through just a couple of examples here to figure out what the heck is going on.
and help everyone overcome their envy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
So that's really what it is. So let's start with the first ingredient here in this dish, in this soup of amazing, incredible hypergrowth.
Yeah,
I think the first one is they got a lot of top funnel, like an amazing top funnel, right? So let's kind of go through the list a little bit. So I don't necessarily know the Cursor story. I think they had a lot of word of mouth. That kind of helped them. The Cursor is like a developer tool, basically, kind of helps them write code faster with AI, right? Guess what? People loved it. But for example, Lovable. So Lovable is more of a developer tool for non-developers. You can kind of put in your, hey, I want to have this app built, and then it builds this app for you, right? It's like, it's magical. But basically, they kind of talked about how they had, like, I think 2 or 3 launches, and the third launch suddenly took off. And they basically kind of put something on Twitter, so X, and suddenly they had crazy engagement, and the engagement kept going and going and going, right? We had the example with Cursor, where a 7-year-old on YouTube was basically showing people how she's coding. Yeah. And everyone was like, wait, what?
It's so amazing. She creates like I think it's a web page. And there's like, and then we wanted to say Harry Potter. And there's like, boop. Now you can see it says Harry Potter. Now I don't want it to say Harry Potter anymore. I want it to say Bilbo Baggins. And it's like, boop. Now it's just hilarious to watch.
And I think Bolt, very much similar kind of product in this space, kind of a developer tool, right? And then we have someone like, and we're just adding this to the list. We had him on the show, Adam Robinson's RB2B. Also, kind of, they basically had he basically kind of built a audience on LinkedIn, and it grew extremely well. He figured this thing out. He went to 100,000 followers really quickly, and basically being able to create this amazing top funnel organically or planned. I would say Adam Robinson was way more structured around this. Like, hey, this is what I'm gonna do now. I think the Lovable and the Cursor guy kind of stumbled into this a little bit more. I think kind of they maybe were a bit lucky with some of those punches. Yeah. But basically, you need to have this surface. Otherwise, you cannot attract enough people coming through. And this is just, by the way, the first ingredient here, right? And I think what helped them to get to this point was some kind of a magical feeling that people had around this. Yeah. Something that was really emotionally enticing for them to like it, to share, to kind of tell other people about this stuff. I think we heard a similar story from Tendecia in their early years when they were basically kind of having those avatars, and it was super shareable, right? Basically being able to create something that is extremely successful online in the top funnel, like easy to share, easy to like, but also connected all the way down to the actual product experience, right? Kind of, and these companies have been, for some reason, been able to achieve that.
So really, when you say top of funnel, you're not talking about, they have a big email list and they send out an email, and then it's like, no, that's actually not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is they got a lot of awareness, basically. Yeah. And I think there's a couple of, if we break this down a little bit further, there's a couple of reasons that happened. If you think a bit about Instagram back in the day, basically that app could exist because there was an app store that was taking off, the iPhone was taking off, and mobile connectivity was improving. Like the speed of internet, not on Wi-Fi, but on mobile networks was increasing. And you also had a digital camera in the phones, right? That got better to a point where now you could have a network where you shared images, like a social media network. And social media was kind of trending because of Facebook and because of X. And in came Instagram and kind of leaned into these trends that were already taking place. And basically, I think the catalyst being the speed of mobile connectivity, right? So I think that's pretty important. Same to a degree with Cursor. I think there's a new technology, Hello AI, that can actually help you do it. And I think there was just something incredibly amazing when you watch basically an AI write a bunch of code on your behalf. You don't need to know what is I mean, it helps, by the way, don't get me wrong, right? There's stories now of folks who build stuff with Cursor who aren't technical people and they're running into a bunch of issues, right? But it's still, this is something that makes an average developer a 10x developer all of a sudden, right? And this is just amazing to see. And I think it's the same with maybe the allure also Synthesia had with their video avatars, right? And obviously they had virality built into their components. So I think it was something like for every one video that got created on Freemium, They attracted 1.5 new users. Boom, you have a viral loop right there, right? Because those users would create video. So I think there is something around the trends, and also, to be frank, some kind of a wow effect when you think about it. Lovable is the same, right? Me being a non-technical person, realizing that I can go in and tell it to build a, I don't know, personalized calendar app for me and my family because we have, I don't know, a special calendar need. You know, that's pretty amazing to think about, that you can go and do this stuff. So yeah.
And I think in reverse, right? Sure, you can always go about and trying to synthetically construct that, like from whatever you're selling, right? But I think it's clear that for some products that are out there, this is just a lot harder to achieve.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, for a new CRM or like an accounting software or, you know, whatever it might be, it's a lot harder to create those, you know, those wow moments, frankly, right? And to create, you know, tap into this emotional reaction that happens, you know, instantly when someone is seeing this, thinking like in their head is like, you know, an explosion goes off. I think we saw something similar, and kind of we're forgetting this almost because it's, for me, it's part of the establishment already. But ChatGPT, I mean, OpenAI's product, basically.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember this back in, you know,
First
January
prompt.
23 or something like this? And, you know, LinkedIn was filled with shitty screenshots of ChatGPT and kind of what it was doing and how it was writing this stuff. And people were just like, oh my God, everyone will lose their jobs, right? And those kind of situations, you know, on the top funnel, that's what I'm kind of referring to. Those were the ones driving this massive attention, and then also the revenues coming out of this, right?
I think it's also the reason it has that appeal, especially in the top funnel, is here's the thing we've assumed will just continue as is forever. It can never be improved. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? I don't need to understand how to write code. It just explain to me again. It writes the code for me. What do you mean it writes the code for me? Is, you know, that's kind of insane when you think about it all together, right? It's like teleportation. You and I can sit here on this show and say it's never ever going to happen because it's just something you see in the movies. And then one day when someone does, you know, introduces teleportation, you know, number one, obviously old school outbound door-to-door sales is just going to be crazy. You're going to have a sales rep enter your room out of the blue.
Transportation-led growth. I can see it already.
But also it's like, how crazy would that be? That product, I could see LinkedIn once again go like, oh my God, what is going on, folks? Yeah. So I think there's that component too. Let's move on to another piece.
The next thing is, hey, are we going down the funnel? Yeah, we're going down the funnel. Yeah, that's kind of structure we're taking. But the first thing is obviously the attention. And then the next thing is, and this is a little bit of like the PLG playbook, actually. Yeah. It needs to be easy to understand, easy to explain to people, easy to extract value from this thing, right? And when you go through the list, like they have all of those check marks all over the place, right? Yeah. Again, easy to understand. I'm not a developer. I don't know how this thing works. But if I see a 7-year-old write code, then I'm like, okay, I understand this. I understand the appeal.
Now I can hire young people to develop.
But it's also like, oh, this would probably be good for all my developer friends that I have, right? And, you know, again, I'm not even the target audience. And I could do word of mouth for them, like immediately is no problem whatsoever, right? And kind of getting it immediately, I think that's a major thing. When you think about some of the established products and, you know, some of the people that are trying to differentiate, it's like, oh, you know, for example, what is it, Etio and Folk or something like this, kind of the new CRMs. Yeah. It's like, okay, I kind of get it's new CRMs, but like, do it. I mean, I've spent like half an hour on this. Do I really get why this is so extremely much better and different? I'm sorry, I still don't. And I'm an expert in this thing. I'm sorry, right? And you know, if you can get to this moment of, oh wow, this is completely different. I totally get it. I totally understand how this is driving value in 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes. That's kind of part of the equation here.
I think you and I frequently talk off air about the abstraction layer of a problem, right? So think about Calendly here. The ability to book a meeting easily. That's a very can you take it one level further down to be even more specific? Probably not, actually. It's already pretty far down to the practicalities. CRM is pretty high up. Like what is the problem here it's solving? What is it? I mean, conceptually I understand there's something with accounts and opportunities, but like why do we need it versus here's Cursor. It helps you write code. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess developers need that. So it is on a concept. It's extremely specific and actually also in this case, very narrow who it's for. Cursor is not for non-developers. Let's be clear. It's not for you and me, by the way. Yeah. I don't even know how to install the thing, right? But if you're a developer, it's like brilliant solution. So getting the concept.
And I think you're right. I think the tangibility of this makes it so much more interesting, actually. Kind of when you think about, I don't know, HubSpot or, because, I don't know why we're going back to the CRM stuff, but it's like grow better. It's like, okay, I understand. Totally get it. Totally understand. Totally see the value. But what specifically does it do for me, actually? Kind of why is
it? For the muscles. Grow the muscles better.
And there's so many products out there that basically kind of have this problem. However, and this is also what I want to say, I don't think you would be selling HubSpot more and faster and quicker by saying you can create accounts and you can add contacts to those accounts and you can run deals to your pipeline. You can close win deals. You can create invoices from it. Like that wouldn't help them either, right? No. So I think some product categories, they have to, in order to summarize all the things you can do, you have to stand a little bit higher up, basically, because otherwise it would become extremely boring. Kind of the reason for the HubSpot being so enticing is you can do all of these things in the same spot, right? And then trying to list out all the pieces it can do, it's not going to make the total actually better, right? So, and I think people need to understand that in some cases, depending on what you sell, it will be extremely difficult for you to kind of reach this one thing that you do so well that everyone immediately understands.
No, it's also an unfair comparison. Like HubSpot is a suite that sells different products to different teams, and so it is difficult, right? And it's different. But
I think there's, to cut you off.
Well, thank you for cutting me off.
There are some people that have built a suite but are still only, really advertising one feature. For example, Stripe. Yeah. Stripe is doing a lot of things. Stripe is not just doing the one thing that we all know them for, like processing payments. They're doing all kinds of other things, and I wouldn't even know what they are. But at the end of the day, when you go to their website, it's about this one feature, basically the payment processing. That's what all of this is about, right? And that, because it's still the flagship use case basically for them. Yeah. They keep promoting that obviously, and then kind of create their anchor points and their churn resilience basically around some of the other products.
No, great. I'll just cut you out in post and then resume my talk track, and then we'll figure it out. No, because the other thing I was going to say, actually, there's another component here, which is you also have to realize that the amount of people who write code is inherently big. It's a massive market. It's a huge problem. Not a problem, but it's a problem a lot of folks actually have in the ability to scale their production, right? So the size of the market is huge comparatively to a bunch of others, and the frequency of use, which it's funny how rarely it's being talked about when you talk about TAM and size of a market. How frequently does this segment have a need for Cursor? If you're a developer, well, most of your day, actually. Maybe also weekends, if you have pet projects you're developing at night. This is something that will be used in so much at the end of the day, and you have to realize that ingredient, if you don't have it from inception, it's going to be pretty difficult probably to grow as fast.
And I also think kind of we've jumped over this a little bit. We call it freemium or PLG, but basically kind of the ability to not have artificial barriers of entry of like a salesperson you need to talk to, or a credit card need to pull out. Kind of you can just jump in, try this thing out, totally get it, and then adopt it into your life, and then pull out the credit card. Kind of basically having that friction removed for those super simple use cases. And again, not everything can be PLG'd, but if you have something that's totally easy to get, totally easy to understand the value, then this lends itself to being kind of a freemium model or trial model or whatever you want to do, but basically without a salesperson in the loop.
So I've heard a few folks say, well, freemium doesn't really work for enterprise sales. And I'm not sure that's entirely true. I'm not the expert here, but just looking at some of the other cases such as Asana and Cursor here, by the way, I think probably it works, because what happens is they start out at freemium. The speed and simplicity of purchasing, extremely fast and extremely simple. Like, you don't need to involve legal or finance. They're just a bunch of engineers that just swipe their personal credit card and get this thing. And, their boss loves them because all of a sudden they're way more productive. What happened to Greg? Now his output is 3x. We should promote that guy, right? And so I think that's one dimension. And the other is the time to value is like, I imagine setup is pretty simple. We're talking a minute here, tops. And then once you have it, I think it's like one prompt, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I think it just removed an hour and a half from me now. Like, I can see the value here.
I'm not entirely sure. So the Cursor stuff is really difficult for us to comment on because we're not
developers.
We're not developers, right? Because you at the end of the day, you could go into ChatGPT and ask that and then get like the code back, right? You could copy some of that back and forth. I think there are a couple of other reasons why this is so magical, which we don't understand, but developers do, and they think it's magical. So, and kind of that be it. But I think the other point that you mentioned is another really important one, which is ease of integration, ease of onboarding, ease of setup, kind of getting to this point really quickly without needing to, change processes in the organization, or, go through some security stuff, or go through legal, or have other integration needs that need to happen first. Kind of, if you don't have that stuff, if it's just not there, you just need to download and plug it in. Maybe it takes more than a minute, but maybe 5. Like, that is what's kind of, driving this further down into the adoption, right? Kind of not having any of this friction to deal with. I think that is extremely magical. And again, that is not true for most or many different other SaaS products or products in general. It's just not true.
I was just thinking like, if you're in mid-market right now, just imagine that take the fastest deal you possibly can. A customer submits an inbound thing and they go like, I want to buy it now. If it's 10,000 MR, I don't care. I need it now. How quickly can you deliver? How much time we're talking? You still need to pass it to an AE who needs to still do negotiation and probably run Medic or Spiced or maybe best case we're talking 2 weeks versus Cursor. Like, they swipe the credit card themselves. This thing could take 10 minutes probably. This is like radically different. So even though the unit cost is way lower and you can laugh at their $20 per user thing, and you're, cashing in 5K MR deals all the time, they could outrun you like crazy. Their sales velocity is going to be through the roof comparatively. And I think that is a key component of what they have figured out. Like, and I think it shouldn't be lost on anyone that for a bunch of these teams, a lot of the traditional ways, I should say almost, of running a SaaS company or software business where you have a sales motion and need to jump through so many hoops, it's just not there. It's a system that just runs way more efficiently.
And the thing is, right, so when we say it's a system that runs way more efficiently, it's like, to a degree, you're telling people like, hey, you can create that super efficient setup yourself. Our point is actually, despite everyone being super envious, you probably can't.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not because you're stupid or these other guys are so smart.
Yeah.
It's just the physics of what they have built basically lend itself to, this equation where all the check marks turn green and then just 100 million spits out, basically, right? And again, right, they have this excitement effect in the top funnel that, drives word of mouth, probably because it's a great product, but it's also like mind-blowing, right? They have a really easy value prop that's easy to understand. They have an easy way to get started. Yeah. And, you don't even need to take out your credit card. You can do this later. And that still works for them, right? They're still making a bunch of money on each of those users, right? Yeah. And just to be super clear, there is only This has nothing to do with, quote unquote AI companies.
No.
Like this is a very specific subset of those AI companies that basically kind of got to this mind-blowing, trifecta here, and then was able to scale like crazy.
Yeah, so sorry to break it to you. If you're only growing 40% year over year, north of 10 million AR, I'm so sorry for you. I mean, the compound will be pretty sweet, but you're not going to move as fast as all these other teams we're talking about in this episode. So,
but also all these other teams, we're talking about 5 teams.
No, exactly.
It's like,
but I think it's so important. Like, I think a lot of folks, they will look at those teams and go like, dang, how do they do it? And maybe it's not even those teams. Maybe it's others in the industry that are not growing as crazy, but still growing fast. And you fail to realize that there's a bunch of things around the context they're operating in that's just different.
What you do have is, those kind of people that you just mentioned, amongst other names, they're also called venture capitalists.
Yeah.
And they're basically kind of looking at this like, oh, cool, that's the new blueprint. That's the new expectation. So I heard, where's it, Harry Stabbings, like triple, double. That was yesterday. Like that is old news. Now it's, quintuple, quadruple, triple, double, basically, right?
And
so
it happens
5x, 4x, 3x, 2x, right? That's how you get now in 4 years to 100 million.
No, and it's not years, it's quarters, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think to a degree, this is also creating a super distorted reality for like founders. It's like, okay, wait a minute, I didn't, quintuple. Yeah. Am I now a loser? Can I still go out fundraise? It's like, am I still worth anything? It's like, come on. I mean, there are not so many teams out there. And we're going to get to, there's a little bit of a flip side here that should help all of us envious people rest a little bit, better at night. But Mikkel, sorry, I was cutting you off, but you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, at least as a closing comment for me, it also, you have to look at this list we ran through now, and you just have to reflect over what can you realistically control in this process, right? You do have path dependency, as does Cursor. There will be physical limits to how fast you can grow. If you want to change those, you need to fundamentally, redefine the business altogether, which is probably not going to be your job. Let's be honest. It's going to be the CEO on the board if need be. And who wants to roll the dice if they're growing at a 30, 40, 50% clip every year? So I think you just need to look at what is within your realm of control. And
and I think then there's kind of a flip side to this whole thing, which obviously no one talks about because, it's less sexy on LinkedIn.
But we're doing it on this show.
Because, we started this out with talking about German politics. I think whatever next topic is going to increase the sexiness level for sure. But so my point is, one example, 11x, been out there, clearly people have now figured out that they have immense churn, like crazy churn. I heard something like 60% net retention.
They're
something
overperforming.
Like that. So something like that, right? We have all heard kind of that Adam Robinson from RB2B has like 15% monthly churn or something like this, right? Basically now capping out at, I think, 4 million, not growing anymore. You went to 4 million really fast, but then, capping out afterwards. We hearing less and less about companies like Copy AI. They've been really dominating and raising and doing all of these things. And it's kind of, getting quiet. So why is that? I don't know. I think someone was looking at their web traffic and it's tapering off and actually kind of going down. So, maybe this is kind of a hint, right? So what I'm trying to say is what is easily gained is kind of also easily lost, And really, we talked about the moat and all of these other things. And what, in this equation of, wow, this is amazing. I totally understand the value. It's easy to onboard. You really need to also realize that what's easy to onboard is sometimes also easy to offboard. Like it's very straightforward, right? And the competitors are popping up all over the place. They're doing a decent job. If there's no reason for you, if the company isn't providing any way of stickiness, then why wouldn't you just jump over to the next cheapest player here potentially, right? And what would be a moat? Well, a moat would be something where it's easy to integrate, but really difficult to pull out. Another thing could be like, hey, you just build a habit around this thing, or you kind of distribute it in the organization that much that it's like suddenly this is creating stickiness. But really in this equation, and this has been unsolved in the market largely, I think, is not only showing that you can get to 100 million, but also showing that you can, retain those 100 million and add another 100 million in the next 6 months or whatever it's going to take, right? And kind of that part of the equation, no one really talks about it. And no one publishes on LinkedIn, right? And we have seen a lot of those AI companies like reach peak hype eventually, but then just simply struggle to maintain their customer base, right? And I think that, not that this is like a silver lining for anyone here, but that part, for companies that are maybe harder to understand, harder to sell, take longer to onboard, longer to integrate, it also means you're probably deeper into the organization than those other comparative tools here, and therefore it's harder to kind of rip out and replace, right? Yeah. And I think that balance, I think people completely forget about that.
Yeah. I agree. And speaking of sticky, if you've been with us for plus 200 episodes, of course you have left a review. And you're probably already subscribed. I would be surprised if not.
Well, if you haven't, please do, right? I'm not. Last time I checked, it's free, I think also. So I think that's pretty
I'm pretty
great.
sure. So we should be growing pretty fast, actually.
Wonderful.
So much.
Mikkel, thanks a bunch. Everyone else, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye-bye.